Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about treating yourself like a professor. Join us as we discuss giving yourself professor-like office hours, tenure, evaluations, and a sabbatical in order to make yourself more productive and happy. Let's get started. Listeners, today we are talking about treating ourselves like a professor. And if this is a little intriguing to you, it's meant to be. And Julie, why don't you take it over from here?
Okay, well, you know we're all fans of Gretchen Rubin's podcast, Happier. On one of her podcasts, she started off with a try it at home tip. And she said this was a tip to help you have a better strategy to be maybe more productive, be happier, get more stuff done, or just to deal with problems in your life. You could use it in a lot of ways. And she said, it's best if you think of yourself in the third person because you get outside of your head and because we're all better at dealing with other people's problems than our own. We can always give somebody some insightful advice, but it's hard to do that to ourselves. So she said, if you can think of yourself in the third person, and then she said, it's even more helpful if you can kind of identify yourself as something else. So she picked a professor. And I think she's done other tips like think of yourself as a toddler, or she's done a lot of other ones. Yeah.
I was wondering why we didn't pick those. Those sounded like a lot of fun. Like treat yourself like a puppy, treat yourself like a teenager. I'm like, these sound awesome.
I know. I thought we're going to have to look into that and see if we, what else can we how else can we think about ourselves? So if this still is kind of not clear to you, she and her sister gave some examples that they've applied to their life. And she said, for example, you could give yourself office hours. Pick a time when you are going to work, if it's work that you're trying to be more productive at, and say, this is when I'm going to do that. And then, that frees yourself from distractions or procrastination. And a lot of people find that they get a lot more done if they give themselves office hours. So have either one of you ever thought about doing something like that?
I don't know if I have thought about giving office hours before, but I think I kind of instinctively did this. Like my most clear example of this is that every day my office was shut down from 1 to 3. My whole of motherhood. Do not bother me between the hours of 1 and 3. Like I am off the clock. You either need to be napping or finding something else to do, or don't talk to me between 1 and 3.
So Marie's office is closing down.
Right.
Yes.
I feel like I was open the whole rest of the day, so I had to have like office hours that were closed.
Yes. I remember those days.
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, I do love the idea of having actual kind of like office hours. Because I do think that she has another principle that she talks about sometimes. It's the principle of something that can be done at any time is done at no time. And so I feel like if we give ourselves office hours for certain things, that means we have set aside the time to accomplish or be open to a certain task. Where if we didn't set a designated time, it might just get floated to the next day and the next day and the next day.
And it really, I guess, when you said that, Marie, it made me think it wouldn't even have to be work. I mean, it could just be, this is my time to read, or,
oh, sure.
It could be whatever you want it to be, but just so that you make sure you allot some time for it.
Right. I know I love both ideas there that are encompassed in this, is that it can help you get things done that you would otherwise begrudgingly get to and dread and put off, but also it kind of helps protect certain boundaries that you have in place for kind of a healthier lifestyle. And I know, Marie, I did the same thing when my kids were little, and like it was either the baby's napping or then you move into nap time, but you're still not coming out of your room, even if you're not sleeping. And, but I even say the phrase and have said it over the years. Like if somebody's asking me a question too early, I'll say, I'm not on yet. And that's actually what I say. I'm not on yet. Or at night, if it's too late, oh, I'm sorry, I'm off. Right. You're going to have to talk to me tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, even now, you guys know this about me. I'm done like by 9 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I might still be awake for a little bit, but also I'm just not on my phone. Like my phone is off at that point. And sometimes the phone kind of turns off around 7 for me. And so I will probably still check it. And if it's something that's urgent that needs to be answered right then, I will. If it's not considered urgent, it can wait for the next day's office hours.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that.
Yeah.
Well, you guys probably remember I actually did this more literally a few years ago when I felt like I had too much going on. I think I was teaching a class, doing the podcast. I don't know. I just feel like I had a lot of work to do that required reading and writing. And so I would drive to the Brentwood Library and just get it done because at home I was distracted by my animals, like, oh,
That's right.
or the phone ringing or people in the kitchen because we homeschooled. And well, of course, this was college, but my son lived at home during college. So, people were just in and out, it seemed like. And I don't know. I just couldn't focus. I think I have ADD. So it was nice to just go sit at this stark desk at the Brentwood Library and that, and I had nothing else to do but that. And I found like I could get what used to take me all day to accomplish, I could just whip out in an hour and a half, like it really wasn't too much for me to do. I just wasn't able to get it done. You could go to a coffee shop. It doesn't have to be the library. You could do a lot of different things. One of the examples she said, a man wrote in and said that he had given himself a grant to go work, that he had given himself a coffee grant, like a $500 a year coffee grant to justify going to the coffee shop. Oh, that was interesting.
Right.
This also, though, made me think of, this is a little less literal and more abstract, but you remember in Happy School when she said you could only think about your WMDs, your what's missing and disappointing in your life at specific times of the day or of the week. I kind of thought that would apply here too. Like if you, instead of ruminating over problems and worrying about them, give yourself an allotted time to either pray about it, talk with a friend, try to come up with a solution, like to try to solve the problem, not just to let it run on a loop in your head,
That's a good idea. If you stay at home like the three of us do, you may not initially see the need for office hours because, again, like it's not like you don't have another time to do it. But I also think that there is some truth to the fact that we get more done when we're actually kind of busy. And I think if we lay out our day like someone who's working, like, okay, this hour I'm doing this hour I'm doing that, this hour I'm doing that, it kind of provides boundaries. And so it might not be necessarily office hours, but it is laying out like, here's a designated time for working out, and here's my designated time for lunch, and this is my designated time for cleaning up. And like it just kind of draws a good boundary. And then even for you, Mindy, like here's my split between I'm on as mom and okay, now I'm off and this is just my time,
Right.
I think that's helpful to just kind of draw boundaries, because if we just wake up in the morning and say, oh, well, I don't have anything on the calendar, the time just seems to slip away. And I love a day like that just as much as the next person. Just let's putter, let's do the next thing that pops into our head and then the next thing. But I wouldn't say that those are my most productive days.
Right. No, too many days like that, and then you find yourself really behind,
Yes.
Yeah. And it is just a way to give yourself, it's like giving yourself a deadline, because nobody else is saying this must be done by noon, but you can say that to yourself. And I know I work better under pressure. So if I just wake up and say, oh, I've got the whole day to do this, then it will take me the whole day to do it.
Well, I definitely learned that I loved being able to have some sort of reward for all of the meaningless errands. And I say meaningless, but they're things that have to be done. And so the simple fact of writing something on a piece of paper and crossing it out, like completed, gives me joy.
Love that.
Like I don't get a paycheck. I'm not getting recognition from a boss. My kids are not going to start singing my praises. Wow, Mom, you got our laundry done so fast. You don't get that type of reward. So I needed to almost create a system where I felt successful. And even if I was the only one feeling successful, nobody else saw, marking that thing off the list helps.
It's true.
And so it does. It just creates some structure. And it took me a lot of years before I felt like I was a professional at staying at home. Because I know I stayed at home a lot of years where I did not feel like I was a professional. I didn't know how to handle all the time. And I know that anybody that goes from working full time to staying at home, there is a lot of transition in there to try to figure out how to create routine, schedule, reward system, because we want to feel successful in our jobs. And if your job is staying at home, then you have to get more creative.
Yeah. So now you're Dr. Mindy Silliman.
That's right. Okay, are we going to talk about giving yourself a grant? Because I really liked that idea.
I like that idea too. What were your thoughts on it?
Okay, well, stemming from my last conversation here is when I was really thinking about, have I ever given myself a grant, or how would I give myself a grant, like to promote growth or change or, something like that. And I actually realized when Bryce and I both agreed for me to stay home with kids, that was a grant. It was a sacrifice of what I could earn outside of the home. It was an investment in our family over years. So this grant will take a lot of years. However, I feel that my life is living on the blessing of a grant to be able to shepherd, raise my children, be a part of my husband's career. I could not have done that had we not made that decision to sacrifice what I could make outside of the home.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I feel like, of course, it's easy to see how we serve our children and nurture them and train them up. But even if I didn't have children, I felt like I got to be a true helper to John and do things that he couldn't do while he was at work, and trying to make his life better and easier. And so I don't regret that at all. And, I could have made a very good salary, as a pharmacist, but I don't know. I think I made I made the right decision for me. I know I did, and don't regret it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and say that I regret staying home, because I think I've enjoyed it daily. And I continue to enjoy it. No. But like with the grant thing that they were kind of talking about in here, I think it was kind of like, let's give ourselves a designated amount of money to do something.
To support that. Yeah.
Yeah. To support something that we want to do. So say you wanted to start a podcast. And it's going to cost some amount of money, and it's just a passion project. So you might say to yourself, okay, well, I'm willing to spend up to $500 on this passion project. And so okay, I know I need a microphone. I already have a computer. I need a monthly hosting site. I need to pay for X, Y, or Z. And just kind of saying, okay, even if I never make any money off this, my whole investment into it was my $500 or whatever, and I've gotten X amount of pleasure out of it or whatever. I feel like that was kind of you can do things. I think a lot of times we think that maybe it would be self-serving, or can we really do this for ourselves? And when we really look at it, it's well, it would only be an investment of X, Y, or Z, and look at how much enjoyment I would get out of that.
Yeah. It's not like you have to make you have to make up that money, and compensate for what you put into it. You got so much out of it that wasn't monetary, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking this is kind of a superficial way, but you could even just give yourself an allowance to have a home office, like a space that's yours, where you are creative. It could be a creative space, sewing or crafting or podcasting, or even just paying the bills and kind of having it as your space. I never really had that. I had a schoolroom, but and now I do have an office in this house. It's kind of nice. It could be a corner of a room, though. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be
right.
a whole room.
Right. Yeah. I feel like my husband and my boys would say that women play a lot of games with money like this. Like, say we want to update our wardrobe, we'll be like, okay, well, I'm willing to spend X, Y, or Z, and then we'll try to work within certain parameters. Or it's like, oh, well, I have this free money over here, so now I can apply it over there.
Math.
Yeah, but I do think that all of that is sort of like in that grant category. Like, we're finding ways to accomplish what we want. We're not going overboard in this area, but we're not just going to say, well, I'm not just going to not spend any money in that area.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that is helpful for me. So whenever you pull up to a stoplight, it seems like there's somebody wanting money. And in my mind, it's like, do I give to every single person that's at the stoplight? Do I give nobody that's at the stoplight? And so sometimes I've just taken like a certain amount of cash and kept it in my car and like, okay, there is that money. It's already there. I don't have to make the decision every time. Because is there still money left in that cash that I put in there? Okay, then I can give. And it's not like a new decision every time. And I don't feel like I'm spending like, I don't even know how much I'm spending at these red lights. It's like, well, no, because I put a certain amount in there and it hasn't run out yet. I don't know. That can be kind of a grant situation too.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I like that.
So anyways, we have a lot of girl math to come up with a lot of grant situations.
I mean, we could do a whole podcast about girl math, mom math. I mean, I'm totally behind that.
For sure.
I have a trainer grant, so I can stay in good health.
Yes.
No, that's very true. That's very true.
Heaven forbid I just do that on my own. No, I need to pay someone.
Well, let's talk about another aspect of being a professor, which I think has always been romanticized in my mind the most, is the idea of taking a sabbatical. It's like, isn't that why anyone wants to be a professor? Because eventually you'll get to take a sabbatical. And then I was thinking about, now, why do I love that idea? And I always go back to this book that I read in elementary school. You'd go to the library, you get to pick out a book, and I must have picked out this book multiple times to take home. And I thought, was that like a famous book? Was that a book that people even know about? And it was so funny. I just typed in like family that goes on sabbatical, and it came up as a Newbery award-winning book. And so it must have been in my school library. It was written in 1956, called Family Sabbatical. But it's written for 8 to 12-year-olds. And Julie, you would have absolutely loved it. Maybe you did read it.
I need to add this to our children's book club.
Yes, it is called Professor Ridgway is on Sabbatical in the South of France. And the whole family is along for the adventure. And so he basically takes his family to the south of France and they're from the Midwest. And it was just, I remember, it must have just been so fascinating to me because I checked it out multiple times. And to this day, the idea of a sabbatical so intrigues me. And I want the opportunity to take a sabbatical, but I'm not a professor.
Aww.
But what do you guys think about that, taking a sabbatical? How can we take one in our non-professor lives?
Well, first of all, I think it's important we're not talking about being lazy here. You know, it is.
Right.
I looked up the definition of sabbatical. Like, it actually comes from the Hebrew word Sabbath, which means to rest or to step away from something. And it meant to be intentional about doing something that is not your regular job. So they said to kind of think about it like finding something that really enriches your life. You know, you may not be able to go to the south of France for 6 months, but you can find something that enriches your life. And for me, and this would be, just ideal situation. I don't know that I could ever do it, but I think it would really be cool to learn a different language.
I do too.
And, if you could put travel in there where it's like an immersion experience, that would be awesome. Or travel to learn history. Like when we took our Europe trip, we had a World War II emphasis, kind of a theme going. And I think that would be neat to travel to sites that had something to do with some aspect of history that you were interested in. And lastly, I would take like a woodworking class.
Oh, now that's something you could totally do, Julie.
Yeah.
I mean,
but where are they offered, I guess?
I don't know.
I'm thinking of.
I mean, like all the big power tools, like I'd love to know how to use them all. But
that's true.
So in an ideal world, that's how I would probably spend some time not doing what I normally do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have any ideas about this sabbatical, Mindy?
I did. I actually had two specific ones. First is just coupling that idea of sabbatical. If Bryce or I ever have to take a trip alone for any reason, like right at a conference and for work, but also because he's at the conference, alone, he will put things in his day or he'll work out different or longer. And he takes more time for just thought and Bible reading and journaling and giving himself rest and quiet because it's so different. He's out of the normal everyday things. And I do the same thing if I ever take a trip, that to see that as purposeful and in time. But one of the best things, this kind of came at me about 15 years ago, and it was such a godsend. I didn't realize what it would turn into at the time. But I have a couple of friends that we go on a cruise. It's not every year. It could be every couple years, every 3 years. It's kind of like when one of us says, hey, can we please? The rest of us are like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea first happened when Nathan, my youngest, was 1 year old. And it's just like we were on a cruise together, but the intentional time that after jumping through all the hoops for us each to get there, the intentional time of friendship, the time of talking about what God was doing, the time of praying for one another, it's probably the best women's retreat I've ever been on because of the intentionality of these two friends. Had it been two different friends, it wouldn't necessarily be the same. We do have a great time. We eat great food. So we're not worried about food prep. We're not worried about making our beds. And we're in a nice, beautiful environment. And we are all three just very intentional about that. So again, just over the past 15 years, it's been probably the best gift I could give myself outside of my normal everyday, so that then I was recharged to come back into my normal everyday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know that I've had the opportunity to take a sabbatical. I would love to go on an extended vacation. The thing is, there's so many things I always want to see and do on vacation, but I also think it would be fun to go on an extended vacation where you don't have a huge long itinerary of things that you want to see and do.
Yeah.
But then you need even more time to be on vacation. So,
well, Marie, I do remember the conversation on the trends of slow travel. You were 100% against that. So
I know I'm against slow travel, but yet I kind of find the idea intriguing at the same time. Okay. So yeah, I can't see myself doing it. The only thing I can think of that I do kind of as sabbaticals is in transition times, like at the end of the summer and at the end of Christmas break, I move inward, and I really don't accomplish that much in January or like the end of August. I'm mostly just doing self-care and like binge watching things and eating things I want to eat and not answering my phone, like things like that. But it's kind of like a sabbatical from life. Like I want to go underground kind of.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was maybe the only real life example I can give of that. But I do think that taking a break from routine can be a form of sabbatical. And you can't just take a break for a day. Like, I want to take a long enough break that I actually feel it.
And you're ready to get back to the routine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So whether that's by vacation or just intentionally stopping to do things. Oh, I know one kind of sabbatical I did earlier this year. I gave myself permission to stop Burn Boot Camp and start pickleball in the mornings. So I'd been doing Burn Boot Camp for, I don't know, maybe going on 3 years. And I really wanted to do more pickleball. And the only place I could find to played in the mornings, right when I would have gone to Burn Boot Camp. And I'm the type of person, I either work out in the morning or I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go to the 4:00 class. Like, that is just not going to happen. So I had to pick, and I just kind of gave myself permission, or I can really relate to the guy that gave himself a grant. I granted myself permission to say, I'm doing pickleball. Pickleball is my thing this summer. So like, even though I'm still paying for Burn Boot Camp because I don't want to cancel right now and have a penalty, For the next 2 months, I've granted myself permission to not feel guilty about not going, and I'm going to try pickleball. So I don't know. That was kind of a sabbatical, not in my whole life, but just from what I had been doing, switching to something different just for the sheer, let's see if I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and why should we stick with something if we're kind of done with that season? You know, like seasons will change. We are continuing to change. And Marie, I really love that you did that. And I love that example very much. I love teaching fitness classes, but for 4 years, I took a sabbatical from that on purpose. I didn't feel bad about it. It wasn't right. It was not the right time for me to do it. I had nothing to give. And now I'm back and I'm happy to be back and it's good. But I mean, I just think there's seasons. So giving ourselves permission to change, grow, you know, is good. It's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably the one I would struggle with because I have a hard time letting things go. And so that's probably something I need to do. I can think of some things that it's probably time for me to let it go. But like you said, Mindy, it doesn't have to be forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
a sabbatical has an end. So yeah.
Right.
It does. I mean, yeah, I had to recertify and everything once I decided to get back, but I did it. You know, like the door was not completely closed.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. Well, another thing that professors do besides having office hours and besides taking a sabbatical is they teach, which is their main part of their job. And so immediately that phrase came to my mind, those who can't do, teach. And so immediately that came to my mind because that's what you always hear about every professor. And I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's what the college kids tend to say or other people tend to say. And so I was thinking, though, that there is definitely a element of truth that if you want to make yourself do something, teaching it to someone else is a good way to jumpstart that.
And that's what I immediately went to is teaching somebody else something is really the best way for you to learn as well.
Right.
That's where my mind went. If you really have to learn something knowing you're going to have to teach it, you're going to know it so much better and more deeply. You're going to have a deeper understanding of it. And because sometimes when you think you know something, and then when you're asked to explain it, you get all tongue-tied and you realize you get kind of mixed up and you don't want that to happen if you're teaching someone else. So you're going to be sure you know it really well.
Right.
And I think I have taught, used to call it Sunday school. We call it life group now at our church, taught in the youth group. And now I teach a young mom's class. And that's one thing I would have a hard time giving up because I love the fact that it makes me learn.
Right.
You know, and then you also kind of feel like you should model what you're teaching. So it's a good accountability,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
So yeah, I love this one.
That was my first thought, Julie, was like with Sunday school, life group, or Bible study, one of the biggest seasons of growth and seasons of humbling actually was I wrote a Bible study. I think that was last year. And it was such a neat experience. It's not something I would ever publish, but I'll talk about it. It just was such a humbling experience to be able to try to put into a format to teach other women. And I ended up learning so much. And I never felt like it was finished, but it was really a neat season of growth and learning. And like I said, humbling. I don't know that I'll write another Bible study, but that's something else is I was afraid to do that. And I have mentioned how I'm afraid sometimes to teach fitness classes, but being able to be willing to be scared and doing it anyway, like you're teaching yourself that you're going to be okay, even going scared. And so sometimes I think that with a roller coaster, something as simple as a roller coaster, I'm like, well, all those people that just got off didn't die. So
I always think that.
That's what I think about every time. I'm like, well, okay, all those people didn't die. So I'm just going to hold my breath and get through it. And then I'm like, oh, wait, that was fun. You know, when I look back, but I did it scared.
Yeah. Thought about you teaching, Mindy. You said you were teaching Happy School? Are you
I'm doing that with a friend right now.
Okay.
Not in like a public format, just friend to friend.
Okay.
But, I bet you'll really go deeper in it doing it again, kind of with the intention of maybe leading someone through it.
I could see doing that. I love that. I love that book. I love the premise. I still think about it to this day. So I could definitely see that.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about other ways that this can apply, even if it's not actual teaching, because some people might think, oh, I'm just not a good teacher. I'm not comfortable teaching. But I was thinking of other ways that if you want to do something, you're kind of teaching. So I was thinking, like, if you feel like you need to read more books, start a book club. Like if you think you want to learn to cook better, take a cooking class with somebody, like kind of like exposing yourself or like creating situations in your life where you have to learn that skill. Like if you start a book club, well, you're going to have to read at least one book a month then, especially if you're the leader, because you should at least show up having read the book.
Right.
I was thinking about this in terms of if you feel like you are not having enough social life, like social interaction, well, then you might need to organize a supper club, or you might need to organize going to the movies once a month with friends, or going out to lunch once a month, or something like that. Like, I think that kind of falls in this category. It's like, I need this in my life, so let me create an opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah, teach what it is you want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said this one year on the podcast at the beginning of the year, maybe when we were talking about things we wanted to do that year. I said I wanted to get kind of a better handle on why I believe what I believe, like to boil things down, like beliefs that I've had my whole life that maybe I only understand as, oh, I've always believed it that way. I've always believed that, or I don't know where that came from. And just to be, I guess it's kind of apologetics is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's to kind of get my beliefs down in a succinct way that I could explain to someone else,
Right.
And I think that gives us a better understanding of ourselves. And I don't know. So that's not a formal teaching, but it is a way to talk to others about your faith and
Right.
to have the words, the language for it,
Well, it might fall in under another area, which I love and that professors do or can do, research. So that's kind of falling under research, Julie.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did think about research.
A catalyst for Bryce and I recently was we both ended up having our yearly blood work done.
Oh.
Nothing will send you into research like high or low numbers on your blood work that come back. So it got him and I started talking about different foods and how much life we still hope to live and how we want to be healthy in our old age and how we're not the most healthy with like what the foods that we make at home or the foods that we have on hand at home. And so we started reading articles and books and trying new recipes. And it was almost like, why were we kind of stuck in the mundane, the things that we knew weren't working, but it was just like we needed permission. We needed something to tell us it was okay, or there's a reason to look at your foods. There's a reason to research and pick out some healthier options. And now it's kind of exciting. Like he's at this conference, like I mentioned, and we're talking about the foods he's eating. He's making a foods list. I've got I'm like, oh, I made these salmon bowls last night and we're tweaking out like what recipe we would want to have. But it just opened up a lot to be able to say, like, let's do this in a professional sense. This topic of healthy food, let's actually delve in and look at it and make some changes.
Yeah. I love research.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because we were talking about teaching and now we're kind of talking about learning. So can you think about anything you've learned recently, like in the last year, I guess? Anything new?
Okay, so like things I've learned a lot about this year because I am entering, the end of perimenopause and menopause, is I've just deep dived into tons of information about that and gone to different doctors and listened to different podcasts and read different books. And I've like really feel like I have a handle on why I would do something, why I wouldn't do something, what my options are. So yeah, I would say that in the past year, I've learned a lot about that I hadn't really known before. So yeah, if someone gives me, or if I have a reason to look at something, I really enjoy the process of finding out what that answer could be.
Yeah. On a similar vein, I recently, after John's passing, have been kind of thrown into having to deal with financial things. And I never even paid the bills, y'all. So this is, that's like a baby step. But then there's the whole investment portion. And so, like I said, Steve had to go with me so he could interpret even just the lingo. Like none of it made sense. They might as well have been speaking German at that first meeting, And now I find myself getting on the Fidelity website reading about, IRAs and CDs and bonds and interest rates and what they think is going to happen. And, and I just can't even believe I'm saying that, because I have had that. To me, that just sounds like the most boring, dull topic. But I can honestly say it's kind of interesting. Like it's kind of fascinating how it all works and how people try to predict things and have based on their understanding. And so I think I might be ready for like stock market for dummies, or nice. Like I think I might actually get a book on it or something. Just I don't know. I never thought I would find that interesting, and I am starting to learn.
That's awesome.
Still don't know a lot, but I am starting to learn.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Right. Yeah, I love that, Julie.
Well, one of the other things that I thought of about a professor is, this isn't intentional necessarily, but they are surrounded by younger people. Typically, I mean, there are older students, but this is what I like you, Marie. I always romanticized the idea of being a professor. I think because of like Dead Poets Society or something, So I do like the idea that you would always be around young people, in the know and just current on everything. It just sounds fun. So I think that would keep you young and active. It would challenge you to learn new things, especially technology. And I just know I love having my adult children over and hear what they talk about. And it's like, wow, these are not the conversations I have with my 50-year-old friends. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So I just sit and listen and take it all in. And it's pretty fascinating. So I like the idea of being around younger people. Not that older, I like having people that are beyond me too, but I just think there's a real value in being around people that are younger.
For sure.
Yeah.
Another thing I was thinking about a professor is I looked this up, actually fewer of them than you would think, like less than half. But in our mind's eye, they traditionally have tenure. So they're not going to get fired. They have job security. They're going to be there a long time. And I was thinking about that tenure is probably a double-edged sword, because it's like golden handcuffs. And I remember the first time I ever heard that term, I thought, what does that even mean? I mean, you can see what it means, but tenure is like golden handcuffs. It's like, this is such a secure and safe and good position that even though maybe I'm not challenged by it anymore and I don't love it, or there's other things I might want to do, how can I give up these golden handcuffs and take a risk? And I was thinking about how this might apply in our regular lives. There may be things in your personal life that is a golden handcuff and is keeping you back from taking a risk or trying something new. Or maybe you're just bored with where you are, but you don't have anything bad happening. So it's like, do you really want to rock the boat?
It's a safe spot. Yeah.
Yes. And so I don't know. I don't know what I don't know if I have a lot to say about this, but just that I was thinking that is another aspect of being a professor, and maybe take a look at your tenure and your future that stretches out before you. And like, are you excited about that? Or are there things, like you said earlier, Julie, that maybe you should be letting go, but it's not comfortable to let them go? Or, man, they're good things. Could I ever get those back? Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
One thought I had is I was thinking about Bryce in particular, because he is an adjunct professor. And when he's preparing for a class, he's reading articles and books, and he's putting together lesson plans. And then when he's teaching, he's doing that and engaging with typically younger professionals. But then it ends. He does, there is a time limit to the class. And so sometimes that almost reminds me of Gretchen Rubin's Suffer for 15 minutes, as a way to get things done that are hard. But sometimes if you're in a season of growth and learning, it can be exhausting to learn a new skill, to delve deep into something and kind of change your own behavior or way of thinking, lifestyle. And either you do it long enough that it becomes natural, or you do it for a season and you're done.
Yep. Yeah. So did you guys have any other professor ideas that had come to your mind?
I had just a couple more. Like, I thought a professor is always testing and grading. So I thought about evaluation, like evaluate your life often. What is working? What is not working?
Yes.
I thought that was a good point. And then also just, this kind of goes along with things we've already said, but surrounding yourself with people that want to learn new things. I told you I started a book club. It's a children's book club, not for children, children's books.
Yeah.
And I just love the insight and the discussion that these ladies bring. Like some of them are more literary. I'm more of a math science person. So I see things on the surface and then they see all this stuff that's just so much deeper. And I just love that. And I always learn something new, and everybody has said that. And so I just love that aspect of it. So I just one time I was listening to a sermon series that was in a podcast format, and it was some things I didn't understand, and I just wanted to know it better. And so I just asked a friend if she'd like to listen to them, at her house, and I listen at mine, and then we get together for coffee and talk about it. And she was really excited to do that. Like that, she wanted to learn too. And I don't know, I just enjoy that. I guess the scholarship part of being a professor, that you're learning new things.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think as you get older, it's easier to kind of convince yourself that you can't learn new things.
Yeah.
That belief starts to kind of fade, and you need somebody to remind you that you can, because it feels good to learn something new.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, we actually have a lot of ways to apply being a professor to ourselves, a lot more than I would have thought at the beginning. So this is definitely good food for thought. Listeners, we'd love to know what you think about this topic. You can find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast, or you can email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But before we go, we want to do I'm a Fan. All right, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of a recipe I tried last night, and it's called lemon butter Parmesan chicken.
Yum.
And the recipe was originally to be designed to be grilled, so I almost passed by the recipe because I wasn't going to light up my grill last night as it snowed last night. But I saw at the end, it said, you can just put these in your oven on 400 and broil them the last 3 minutes. Y'all, they were so good. You use chicken thighs, which I rarely use. You marinate them in some oil, some spices, some white wine, just for like 20, 30 minutes. Then you skewer it, chop them up and skewer it. And then you roll them in the panko breadcrumbs, bake them for about 20 minutes, last 3 minutes, broil on each side. And then you brush them in a lemon butter. So it's butter with lemon juice. Y'all, it was so good. I think
sounds really good.
I thought I was going to have some leftovers, and David finished them off. So
that was the end of that.
Yeah, they were really, really good. So I will send you that link.
Okay.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Really good. Yeah. Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
All right. I'm also a fan of some food. But mine is an Amazon purchase of overnight oats mix. And it's a mix of organic rolled and steel cut oats with chia flax seeds. And this is in an effort to replace maybe an unhealthy snack with a healthy filling snack. So I was trying to incorporate oatmeal. I actually love oatmeal. And so this was not a hard replacement for me. And then you can put anything in it. It's almost like yogurt. You can add whatever toppings you want. Nuts, fruits, dried fruits. I love cinnamon. I always sprinkle some cinnamon in there. But I have really enjoyed this mix of oats, and I feel good after I've eaten it, and I'm full. It's a good filling. So I'll send you the link. It's on Amazon.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah. Now, is this in response to your blood work, Mindy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I'm just taking a shot in the dark here. I had some high cholesterol on my blood work, and my doctor sent me a note. Could you clean up your diet? So I was like, okay, well, yes, I can clean up my diet. And the first thing it always says is start to incorporate oatmeal, but I'm not a huge fan of oatmeal. So maybe this would be a way to do that, Mindy.
Oh, Marie. Well, I will say I took the blood work much further than my doctor wanted. All I had was low iron, but I have done so much more overhaul than what he asked.
Okay.
Which is good, I guess. But I already felt like I had to clean up my snacking.
Okay. All right.
Have you tried steel cut oatmeal, Marie? Because I think it tastes so much better than regular.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, really, the only kind of oatmeal I want to eat is that delicious brown sugar traditional one that you add the milk to, and that's just garbage. You know, those instant packets. That's the only kind of oatmeal I like.
I know all about it.
But no, I need to make some real oatmeal, Julie. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Well, if you do this, you can add some brown sugar, Marie.
True.
Yeah, or you could add the swerve, the erythritol, that sugar, and nuts and cranberries and apple.
Little chocolate chips. No.
All right. Well, I'm a fan this week of another good book that I read. So last week I recommended None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And this week I am recommending it's called American Kingpin by Nick Bilton. And this is about the Silk Road. Have you ever heard of it? I mean, it's a true story. The Silk Road was like an internet site where you could buy drugs, guns, basically anything.
Oh, I was thinking like Marco Polo way back.
No. And Congress really wanted to shut it down. So there was just like an all-out effort, all these different agencies in America trying to find out who had created the site, who ran it, how to get him. And that's basically what this book is about. And it follows not only the creator, Ross Ulbricht, who is just 26 years old, and the story of how he creates this is really fascinating, but also different law enforcement people that spent years trying to get him. And so they kind of delve into their lives. And I listened to the audiobook. It was so fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's not something that I have ever Googled. I never was on the Silk Road. Like, it's not like I'm looking to buy any contraband. But to read about how it was created, and then how it was basically this big manhunt, and then how they caught him, and then how they even caught some of the law enforcement that had been looking for him that turned crooked in the course of their investigation. Like, it was just all very interesting. So if you want a good audiobook, American Kingpin was really good. And it got me outside of my normal things that I know about. Like, talk about learning something new. I don't know anything about any of that stuff, but it was just fascinating.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You guys, this was a great topic. I think we will have to maybe try to do treat yourself like a toddler or treat yourself like a puppy or any of those things, because it really gets you thinking in a new way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
This was really fun.
It was.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll talk to you next week.
All right.
Sounds great. Bye.
Bye. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.